right. Hey, guys. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. We got a bunch of more interesting stuff going on. As maybe some of you guys know, there's a big hubbub over voter ID going on in the Congress. And Chuck Schumer came out today, and he's basically like, oh, what are we going to do? Black people don't know how to get IDs. Yeah, essentially, that's what he said. And that's what they've been saying this whole time. It's pretty ridiculous. And I'm going to show you an interview of somebody out on the street asking about this. It's pretty funny. It's like the liberals don't really have a leg to stand on. They don't really stand a chance. And so like everything they say just sounds racist as hell. That they're just like, I don't know. They don't even know where the DMV is. How would they even get a license? They don't even have any idea what they're doing. It's pretty funny. I think it's hilarious. And it just makes them look so out of touch and so dumb. And it's probably going to backfire on them because it shows it's just a real time show of their absolute racism and bigotry and all these kinds of things where they claim to be the fighters for the Black community, and then at the same time they're like, I don't know, they're just really dumb. They don't know how to get an ID to vote. It's pretty ridiculous, but this is what it's like talking with liberals today. And there's not a whole lot of substance that they have. There's not a whole lot of thought that they put into these things. They just whatever Trump wants to do or whatever the Republicans want to do, they know it's bad. And it's got to be bad somehow. It's got to be racist somehow. It's got to be white supremacist somehow. They don't have any real explanation for how that's the case. You ask them, oh, okay, well, how is that white supremacist? And they don't even know what white supremacy is. They don't know anything about fascism or Nazis or any of that kind of stuff. They don't know anything about the Gestapo. They just know that those are the talking points and those are the buzzwords that they're supposed to use. And so they'll write them on their sign and they go stand out in the road and you ask them about it for 1 second and they're like, huh? What's I never even heard of that before. I don't know. But they are out in the rain and snow and they are dead set on Trump as a white supremacist, racist, Nazi, and homophobe too. Yeah, don't forget that. Even though he's done like more for the gay community than like any president, which most people don't know. Like he put out a call to end laws against homosexuality, like globally. Scott Bessent is the first openly gay cabinet member, things like that. And people don't really know this. And so they just know the talking points that they're sent out into the streets and online to basically propagandize the rest of the country and try to just get a narrative going that is anti-Trump. And it's not intended to be accurate. It's not intended to reflect reality. It's not intended to have any facts behind it. It's simply intended to inflame emotions of the uneducated and to get them to mobilize in opposition to Trump and Republicans and anything that's actually good for the society. So that's basically what this is. It's a bunch of propaganda and it's pretty hilarious. We're going to get right into this. And I'm going to show you this first clip. This is basically what it's like talking to a liberal. There's not a whole lot of point to it because it doesn't really go anywhere because they don't actually know anything about anything, but they're so adamant in their ignorance. So they just know for 100% that they are right and they are moral and that they are on a moral crusade. And then you ask them one question about it and they have no clue how to even explain anything to you. So let's take a look at this one.
The far right, seeing Trump and Vance and Charlie Kirk and all, they are white fascist supremacists. Why? Yeah. You're trying to understand why I think Trump is a racist.
Yeah, I'm asking for an explanation. Yeah.
Wow.
He's got nothing.
Let me pinpoint it because it's been an accumulation of knowing about him for the last 20 years in New York. I can't really say why I think he's racist. That's like saying, He's a white guy. He's
So being white makes him racist.
the far right,
Wow.
seeing Trump.
That was really, really educated. I mean, I'm convinced. She convinced me. Did she convince you guys? Yeah, I'm just, wow. That was so compelling. That is, wow. She won me over. You know, it's so she only asked her one question, right? This lady asserts, oh, it's so obvious that Trump and Vance and Charlie Kirk are racist white supremacists. And all the reporter says is why. And she goes, wow. Well, there's so many things that I can't even think of one thing. Just one thing. That's all, just one. Can you think of one example? One thing. I mean, they just are. They just are, because that's what my emotions are telling me. That's how manipulated I've been by the propaganda. And they said it like really convincingly, and they really like got me all riled up and got me all nervous and anxious and scared. And so now it must be true, because that's the way my emotions feel inside. So it has to be factually, objectively true. See, that's how they manipulate these people and get them out into the streets and get them to vote for all kinds of stupid stuff. They don't know anything about anything. You know, this is what it's like talking to them. You can't have any kind of in-depth conversation. You can't have any kind of nuanced conversation. You can't have anything, because they just have a list of propaganda talking points that they just constantly recycle over and over. Well, how do you know that he's a white supremacist? Well, because he's a Nazi. Well, how do you know that he's a Nazi? Well, because he's Hitler. Well, how do you know that he's Hitler? Well, because he's a fascist. Well, how do you know that? And that's it. That's all they have. They don't actually have any substance to anything they say. Because the point is not to have substance, not to have knowledge, not to have facts, not to study anything, not to think things through, but to just go purely based off emotional reaction and emotional manipulation. And so this is the way they try to have conversations with you as well. They don't try to have an honest, open conversation. They try to manipulate you emotionally by moralizing, by shaming, by guilting, by doing all that kind of stuff. Not in good faith debate, not any kind. You can't agree on any descriptions or definitions of words, because they don't believe in definitions of words. So they just make up whatever definition they want the thing to be, so that they can manipulate the situation or the conversation however they want to, and they can shut you down and shut you up and guilt you. That's it. That's all they can do. They don't actually, those of us out here in the real world who want to understand what's really going on, who want to really know what's true, what the facts are, and not just what our emotions feel like. We can't have conversations with these people. There's just no way to bridge that gap. So basically all that's left is to just mock these idiots, because they deserve everything they get, and we should do it more. Because they're really spreading a poison around, especially when they're spreading opinions like that about people. It's just it's destructive and it's disgusting. So, you know, there's all kinds of propaganda that's being spread. One of the things now is that, ICE under Trump is like this brutal, oppressive, out there terrorizing people in the streets and kicking in innocent people's doors and just dragging children out into the street and throwing them in a wood chipper and hiding their bodies and, stupid, extreme, dumbass shit like that. And none of that's really true. None of that's the case. And this video here is very interesting. It's going to compare Obama.
All right,
and Trump.
I got to admit, when I don't get it all the way right, the left has a point here, and this data I'm going to share is actually pretty compelling. I made a couple of videos that exposed the narrative around ICE and compared the Obama administration against the current administration. There were a few people in the comments, though, that let me know, despite that data, the Obama administration actually did things differently, and they were not arresting people erroneously. They were not harassing US citizens. So it made me dig deeper into the data, and it turns out they have a fair point. Here's a quality report for ICE starting with the final 2 years of the Obama administration where we had this data available. only a 0.0225% error rate. That's
Pretty
54 US citizens mistakenly detained out of nearly 240,000 arrests. One mistake out of every 4,000 plus arrests. Only one death out of every 14,000 detainees. Only 4 US citizens who are mistakenly deported during that same time period. I have to give the progressive president props. Like, this is a very clean report. I was the one talking about how messy and how difficult it actually is to enforce the law. This is a very clean report overall. Let's compare it, though, against the Trump administration in the full year of 2025, where they've received so much scrutiny.
How bad is it going to be?
A 0.0067 error rate, meaning that Obama's error rate was 3 times higher, and a cleaner report across the board.
What?
If it wasn't already clear, we are in a propaganda war. And it does not mean, hear me, it does not mean that ICE can do no wrong, or that we shouldn't try to improve our strategy, our tactics, and continue to minimize mistakes as much as we can. But when people are intentionally manufacturing chaos and trying to manipulate our emotions to support their agenda, and when that agenda is an open borders agenda that is unequivocally destructive, harmful, and unloving towards millions of people, we should absolutely question.
Absolutely. This guy's 100% right. He nailed it. Same thing I was saying. It's just emotional manipulation and it's propaganda. You can't trust anything that the left wing is saying. You can't trust anything the liberals are saying right now. Everything that comes out of their mouth is twisted. It's lies. It's propaganda. This report he's showing here, I have a larger copy of it here. We're going to take a look at, and this is the difference here. Obama had a 3.3 time higher error rate, mistaking U.S. citizens, detaining U.S. citizens. But if you hear about the liberals squealing out on the streets and online, you'd think it's every other person. It's actually extremely efficient. Hardly anybody like that gets picked up. Oh, but they're putting them in concentration camps. U.S. citizens, they're deporting U.S. citizens. I've heard people say, well, look at the very bottom of there. Mistaken deportations of U.S. citizens. 0 verified cases for Trump. There was 4 for Obama. I doubt any of these people knew or cared or were out crying about it in the streets. Deaths in ICE custody, more deaths under Obama than under Trump. It's very well run. Trump's doing a great job. It's very clean. It's very well run. It's very well done. So the second you look at the facts on what these people are talking about, everything they're saying is shown to be a complete lie. It's all just mythology. It's made up. It's narrative. Okay. And this is a hard thing for people who actually care about facts and data to understand. These people do not care about facts or data. Okay. They care about getting your emotions whipped up. They then become facts because they get you worked up, and they can tell you anything then. As long as it resonates with you emotionally and it's extreme, and then you're just going to adopt it. You're not ever, these people out doing the protests are never, ever, ever, ever going to look into any of the things that they're saying. They're never going to look into whether there's U.S. citizens being deported, ever. They won't do it. It feels like they are, and somebody said it with a lot of confidence and said that it was really scary, and so we need to stop it. Totally untrue, totally fake. Totally made up, total BS. So, that's where we need to really be aware of this kind of stuff, and not let them bait us into their stupid propaganda war. Let them bait us into lies and even interacting or dealing with or contending with their just made up numbers, their made up stories, and their made up outrage, their fake outrage, their virtue signaling, all this kind of stuff. It's all nonsense. It's all BS, and it's all fake. And so we don't really need to engage with them. There's no point and there's no benefit to it. So here's an interesting video. This is about voter ID, and this guy went around interviewing people on what they thought about voter ID laws and if they thought, that was a problem. So let's take a listen. It's pretty
Minority
funny.
voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs Minority voters are less likely to have the kind.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kind of IDs necessary to vote. Okay, this guy. How would he know that? Is there some kind of study? Is there some kind of data? How would he? The only reason he would say this is because he's been propagandized, and he's heard that story and that narrative online from left-wing sources, from all the left-wing media, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leaders. They say this kind of stuff with absolutely no backing, no truth to it, no facts to it, because they don't care about the facts. They just don't want voter ID to go through because they want illegals to be voting in elections. They know it doesn't harm anybody. They know it's easy for everybody to get an ID. They know, and this is why Tim Walz just signed a law where illegal immigrants can have driver's licenses so that they can have an ID so that they can go vote, even though they're illegal immigrants, or even if they're just immigrants. Illegal immigrants, he said, that even they can have licenses, so then they can show up to the polling place and they can act like they're a citizen and vote. So they know what they're doing, and they're doing it intentionally. And this moron here thinks that it's all true, thinks that it's real. Oh yeah, I mean, it's just super hard for minorities to get a driver's license. Super, super hard. They're so dumb they don't even know what it is. They're just driving around without them. Somebody comes from China. They said somebody's a second generation Chinese. No idea how to get an ID. No clue. Somebody's parents came here from Mexico. They have no idea how to get an ID. Haven't a clue. They have no idea how to figure that out.
Kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for Black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for Black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
They don't have a knowledge of how the internet works or how to get an ID works. They're just so dumb.
People have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed. I also think there's a repression of Black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask Black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any Black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID. So we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. That's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, ID.
Do you know any Black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy cameras?
I know, right? That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that Black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that. It's on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Did you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that Black people, especially poor Black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid can figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPods, whatever.
Your phone has data?
Mm-hmm.
You can actually
unlimited.
Unlimited data.
Mm-hmm. I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of Black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's what my thought process was.
I just think that's ignorant. Ignorant.
Ignorant. That's the word I'm hearing a lot.
Ignorant.
Ignorant.
Very, very ignorant.
Does it sound racist for somebody to say that?
I think it is a little racist because, you're putting people in a category and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Maybe a little bit of racist in it, but like I said, I think it's more stupidity and ignorance.
You judging somebody, like, but you judging them because they black, saying that they don't got it.
What people are they talking to? Who are these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote and they say, "Can we please see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Are you
Love
cool?
showing my ID.
You got no problem with that?
Nope.
Would you have a problem if, when you go to vote, if they say, "Can we please just see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Do you have an issue with that?
No.
Would you have a problem if there was a rule where you have to show your ID in order to vote?
I don't think so. No.
Would you have an issue if there was a rule saying you got to show your ID before you vote?
Nah.
You cool with that?
See, it's just all made up nonsense. It's all just BS. Oh, the ID, they don't know how to do it. They don't know. They're and then you go out there and you actually ask people, you talk to people. And who are these people talking to who think that they don't? They're not talking to anybody. They're just talking to themselves. That's what. They're talking to the fake narrative and the fake news. That's it. Talking to each other, supporting, has absolutely no basis in reality. Oh gosh, you gotta love it. And you know why? It's because of this moron right here.
Jess, there's a new Pew Research poll. That 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance,
see, he's supporting this whole narrative. Well, it's Jim Crow. If we require an ID, black people don't know how to get IDs, and this is going to disproportionately affect them. So this moron here is pushing that same. It's so silly. It's so funny. It's so funny. I mean, it's just like so out of touch and so stupid. Oh, we're just, it's like Jim Crow all over again if you require an ID to vote because, black people aren't smart enough to get an ID. We all know it. Right? Oh my gosh.
if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate.
I forgot about that. It's also they think women are too stupid to get an ID.
Or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country. And when the American people hear what exactly it is doing and what its intent is doing, they're going to be against it as well.
They're trying so hard. They're trying so hard to try to race hustle this kind of thing. They just that's like we don't have any actual points. We just don't want it to happen. And so I don't know let's racism. There it is. That's what it's got to be. It has to be everything we don't like has to be racism. I think it's white supremacy to require an ID to vote so that we know who's who. That's how unhinged these people are, how out of touch with normal people they are, how broken their brains are. They don't actually believe anything they say. It's all just fake. It's all made up. It's all nonsense. But they're able to convince a huge part of their idiot base who doesn't know anything that these things are true. Like all those ignorant white people that guy was interviewing earlier. They just take it hook, line, and sinker. They don't know any black people. They don't know any minorities. They're just like, yeah, I don't know. They're just like too stupid and too lazy, to even go and get an ID. So we can't have that. The bigotry of low expectations, it's this typical liberal kind of thing. Like, oh, black people, they don't know how to get jobs. They don't know how to pay bills. They don't know how to get a house. They don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to get an ID. They do not realize how bad this makes them look. It makes them look absolutely horrible. Horrible. I can't believe these people still have so much support from the Black community. It's like everything they do is just horribly offensive and racist against everybody. So anyway, let's talk about people don't like the Democrat ideas. Because they're so stupid. And so people are leaving blue states and they're going to red states. And CNN here even has to admit it. And so there's a few reasons why this is happening.
The faces of Republicans.
So not only are the taxes and the living and all this kind of stuff in blue states too much for normal people, even now too much for wealthy people, the people are fleeing because they're looking for houses that are cheaper, less taxes, all that kind of stuff. So they're fleeing, they're going to red states. Illinois actually just got ranked worst state in the US by its own residents. And so there's no benefit really to staying in a blue state other than, family, friends, connections like that. But as far as the policies, as far as the politics and taxation, all that kind of stuff, it's a bad deal. So people are fleeing, they're leaving, their citizens are going to red states. So they're importing loads and loads and loads of legal and illegal immigrants into their states so that they can prop up their population so that they don't lose congressional apportionment and they don't lose electoral votes. But not only that, but they're also blue states have liberal women have lower birth rates than conservative women. So they're losing more population that way because they're not repopulating people who have kids. Their kids often, majority, 80% of the time, adopt the same political views as their parents. So they're not having a lot of those kids. And not only are they not having kids, but the kids that they possibly could have been having, they abort. So abortion numbers are through the roof. So they aborted the whole next generation. So they don't have any they don't have any Democrats to replace the old Democrats in their states. So they've got a lot of different factors going on here that is reducing their population. That's why they rely so heavily on immigration. New York, California, Illinois, bringing in tons of people. About a third of the population in California is immigrants, legal and illegal immigrants. So they have 38 million people there, and about 11 million of them are immigrants. So if they lose the pipeline of bringing in immigrants, they're going to lose political power. So because they cannot appeal to the American people anymore to move to their states or to have children to prop up their population. So anyway, let's listen to what he has to say.
To the faces of Republicans nationwide. Why do I say that? Because take a look at the big population gainers versus the last census back in 2020. According to the latest population estimates that take into account the population mid-2025, look at this. The biggest population growth this decade, all 5 of the states that Donald John Trump won in 2024. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and of course, the great state of Arizona, where I spent my New Year's Eve. I love those folks out in Prescott, Arizona. These were the biggest gainers in terms of population compared to the 2020 census. Now, it's not just a red state boom. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at a red state boom here, but it is not just a red state boom. We're also looking at what I would dare call a blue state depression, because who are the people? Who and where are the people moving from into the red states? Well, they're blue states. Take a look here. The lowest domestic net migration this decade. All 5 of the states that were won by Kamala Harris in 2024. Look at this. California, Harris's home state. New York, where I'm coming from right now, of course. Illinois, New Jersey, and of course, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is a bastion of blue liberalism. These are the states that folks in the United States are moving away from and into the red states, which is propelling a red state boom. Now, this is interesting, right? But it could also have major political ramifications if it holds for 2030, the next census. Because take a look here. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for the 2030 census, look at this. Look at the House seat shifts by state. Remember, of course, we apportion the number of House seats depending on the population in each state. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for 2030, states that Kamala Harris won, they would lose. They would lose 7 seats in the United States House of Representatives. The states that Donald Trump won in 2024, they would gain 7 seats. Now, this isn't just about the House of Representatives, right? It's also about the Electoral College, because the number of electoral votes that each state gets is equal to the number of senators. Each state, of course, has 2, plus the number of House seats that they have. So what would this mean for the House of Representatives? Well, if you remember back in 2024, right, it was all about, we were talking about the blue wall. If Kamala Harris could win the baseline Democratic states and then add in the blue wall states of Michigan, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, she would get to 270 electoral votes. But if all of a sudden we, in fact, have applying the 2025 estimates, the population estimates, to the Electoral College, the blue states plus the blue wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin would no longer be enough. Under the current estimates, you get to exactly 270 electoral votes, the minimum needed to win the Electoral College. If, in fact, you apply the 2025 estimates, look at that.
That does not look good for the Democrats, not at all. They got their butts kicked in 2024, and it's only going to get worse as the demographics change. And this is why they're freaking out about immigration. Okay? Because they know this. This is why they're freaking out and why they're sending their propaganda. They're so dedicated to propaganda and propagandizing all these losers who are out on the streets protesting and doing all that stuff and all the bots online and all that, because they cannot lose more population with Trump deporting people, Trump shutting down immigration, Trump banning certain countries, him cutting H-1B visas so dramatically. Like, all of this disproportionately affects Democratic power in the national elections. So this is really what the concern is for them. It's not about being a nice, kind person who really loves their neighbor and standing up for their neighbor, any of that kind of stuff. That's just the propaganda they tell the idiots out on the streets so that they can feel good about themselves, fighting for Democrats to maintain their power and not lose even more of it. That's all it is. That's it. Got nothing to do with ICE being overly brutal, has nothing to do with ICE detaining American citizens and shipping them out of the country and killing people and all that kind of. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with any of that kind of stuff. Okay? This is simply about the national elections. Okay? It's simply about the power and not losing even more of the power. And this was the Democrat plan to gain more power, was through immigrants. Okay? Because they can't do it naturally through population, because they're not having kids and they're aborting a lot of kids. And they can't do it by appealing to other citizens to move to their states, because their policies have become so bad and the corruption and fraud in their states have become so bad that people don't want to live there. So they're really in a bad situation. And yeah, they might win a local election here and there. And of course, they have their pockets of power, and, they're still going to win the governor of Virginia and all those kinds of things. But what is interesting is there's 2 Republican candidates for governor in California right now who are actually leading the polls. They're ahead of all the Democratic candidates. And so Eric Swalwell and all of them, they're behind these 2 Republican candidates. So the Republicans might actually have the 2 candidates get primaried, because it's just like an open run in California. So you could end up with 2 Democrats who run against each other for governor. You could end up with 2 Republicans. You could end up with a Republican and a Democrat. That's how it works there. So right now there's 2 Republicans in the lead, and they might be the only 2 options that voters get when it comes time. So it's interesting. So there might be a shift going on there or something too. But, it's not that Democrats are just going to lose everything and have no power. I mean, it's going to be a long, slow slide, and they're going to start changing their tune, because they're going to realize that they can't get any more voters and they can't get any more power through these weirdo policies that they have now, like when 85% of the American populace says we want voter ID and they're fighting it, it's a losing cause. It's not going to get them any more people on their side. It's going to just appeal to their radical base that they need out in the streets protesting, and that they need online being bots, and that they need, to be able to propagandize to just sort of get through. But they're not appealing to broader voters. They're not appealing to the broader American public. And they're going to have to change that. And it'll be interesting to see how that changes and where they start sounding more normal, like John Fetterman. And when they start coming more over to his side and they start sounding more like that, they can maybe appeal to more people and they could stem the losses of people leaving their party. But it's not looking good right now. So this I thought was a pretty interesting chart. Here's what the data is showing about the Democrats' shift to the left. And this is why they're having such a tough time, because there's very few people on the left in the United States. We're kind of more of a moderate, country, maybe moderate to conservative or centrist to conservative. We're definitely not far left. This person says, anyone who exists in reality knew this already, but the data also proves that the political polarization today is overwhelming due to the left going completely insane. Keep this in mind when they call you a right-wing extremist for being a normal person from 20 years ago. And that's the truth. That is how this is. The left has gone so far to the left, and they've gotten so kooky and crazy with all their weird shit that it makes a normal person who's just hasn't been paying attention. It makes them look like they're some far right person, but really they're still where they were. It's just that the Democrats went so far over to the left that and sort of like lost their minds. So Democrats have shifted sharply leftwards on cultural issues in recent years. So look at this 2012. You can kind of see, can you see that 2012? Look at that the turn that the Democrats took. That was when Obama was in power. That was his second term. And so he got way more radical. And then Trump came in and he radicalized them more, because that's when they fucking lost their minds. The average position of Americans who identify as Democrats and strong Republicans compared to the median voter. So here's the median voter right here in the gray. Republicans pretty much steady. They're pretty much exactly where they've been since like 94 or something like that. There's no strong veer over to the right. And then you just look at the Democrats, and it's wild. Look at how wildly that goes off to the left. This is percent who support, they're using affirmative action as sort of their proxy to see how liberal people are. And then their support for immigration. So in 2008, look at that chart on the right-hand side. In 2008, that was when Obama got elected. Look at what he did. Look at how crazy he made the Democrats on immigration, even though he was pro-immigration, pro-cutting immigration, pro-deporting. He ran on it. There's tons of videos of him talking about it. He sounds exactly like the Republicans now when he was campaigning and when he was in office. So just look at how wildly the Democrat Party has changed, and it hasn't done them any favors. It's lost them a lot of voters. It's losing them a lot of political power because it's too out of touch with the normal American. And sure, maybe they think they think they're the moral ones who are up on their high horse judging everybody else, and so they're gonna, well, go ahead, do that, and your party's gonna fall apart. Nobody's gonna like you. Because you're arrogant and you're offensive and you're annoying as hell, and you're out of touch with what normal people believe and what normal people think. And it's pretty obvious when you see these protests on the street in Minneapolis or wherever, that these people are so out of touch with what a normal person thinks. I don't think they even know any normal people, because when you look at these protesters, they're all weirdos. They're all some kind of weird freaks. You look at their arrest pictures, and they all have green hair and blue hair and piercings all over, and they all look like they just, woke up from a homeless encampment. They are wildly out of touch with the normal person. There's an interesting chart about how all the deaths were of American citizens and ICE and all this. You'd think that ICE is mowing down people in the streets, that they're just out of control, that they're just shooting people left and right. If you listen to any of these lefty loons, and then you bring up the point of how many homicides there have been by illegal immigrants, and they don't know anything about it. They have no idea that they're out there killing people in the streets, killing American citizens, and doing all kinds of terrible things. And these are the people that ICE is trying to get off the street, but they think ICE are the bad ones, even though the illegal immigrants killed 1,713 people. Does that make any sense? And once again, it's not because they actually care about illegal immigrants or Americans or whatever. They don't care about any of this stuff. What they care about is their party. They're using the illegal immigrants to try to prevent their loss of political power and to try to keep and hold on to whatever they can, because every immigrant, any immigrant, legal or illegal, that gets deported from a blue state is a little bit more power lost. So this goes back to what I was talking about before when I was talking about the population increase and decrease. So a big part of this, it has to do with the amount of children that are being born in conservative and liberal areas. Liberal areas have fallen off a cliff. They don't have kids. They don't believe this in family. They don't believe in the nuclear family. They don't believe in any of that kind of stuff. You know, they believe in the LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff. They don't really believe in the nuclear family, the normal way of doing things, the way that almost all the rest of the country believes in, having a family, having kids, and all that. Conservatives still believe in that kind of stuff. And so you can see here on the left side, this is men, and then on the right side is women. So for men, this is the percentage of them that had a child. So in 1980s, 59% of men had children, 47% of Republican or conservative men had children, 47% of liberal men had children. So not that far apart, 12 points, a lot closer. And you can see they move together. That goes down in the 90s for both of them. It kind of levels out or goes up slightly in the 2000s. And then that's when it shifts. And the liberal men who have children just drops off of a cliff to where now in the 2020s, it's way down to 22%. And we've got a 25-point spread between the conservative and liberal men. That's a big difference. That's a lot more children that conservatives are having. So if you consider the same amount, if there's the same amount of men who are liberal, who are conservative, the liberal men or the conservative men are having twice as many kids. Okay. And then you go over to this chart on the right. And so then the kids tend to adopt the beliefs of their parents and hold their same beliefs. So there's just by sheer numbers and generational power of reproducing, there's going to just end up with we're just going to end up with more conservatives. So over here on the female side, and the men's has gone down 12% since 1980s, but the women's has gone up for conservative women, which is really quite interesting. So in 1980s, conservative women, 65% of them had a child, which was very similar to the 59% of conservative men. So you probably, because there was a lot more marriage, I'm guessing. And now there's sort of less. So you see the women having more, but the men having fewer, probably because of single mothers. So 65% of women, 60% of liberal women in the 80s. And then in the 90s, this spread starts going a little bit. Conservative women have a little bit more children. In the 2000s, basically the same. The liberal women's drops off a little bit. By the 2010s, we're already from a 5% spread to a 16% spread. And then in the 2020s, after 2010 into the 2020s, the women's just drops like crazy to where now it's only 40% of liberal women. And it's going to be even more extreme in the younger generations, because like a third of these of like 25-year-olds and younger, a third of them identify as some kind of LGBTQ. You know, they're not interested in having kids. They don't want to have kids. And so I think that probably if you were to look at 25 and under, it's probably like, 15% of them. Not, they're still young. They got a lot of time to have kids, but it's probably going to be significantly lower. Whereas the conservative women, it's gone up in the 2020s. So they're actually having more children now than they had in the 80s. So you're just going to end up with a lot more conservative kids. And you can kind of see this in Gen Z. The girls are very liberal, like the most liberal people in the country. And the boys are very conservative, like the most conservative people in the country are Gen Z men. So 47% of them are having kids. You're going to get a lot more conservatives. And it's just, they want to get married. Married people tend to be more conservative. People who have kids tend to be more conservative. And so we've got a lot of things that are going against liberals, against Democrats, and are going in favor of conservatism in the future. And so this is like generation. I mean, you're talking 25-year spans here. So the liberals are never going to catch up on as far as a birth rate, population repopulating. And this is why it's such a big debate with the immigration. Okay. This is why immigration is such a big debate, because no immigrants favors conservatives and their power in the future. More immigrants sort of neutralizes some of that power of conservatives, and it aids liberals, because a lot of times people who come from other countries, they lean liberal. They like liberal ideas. They're more left leaning generally. And so it sort of helps them. And I believe immigrants have higher birth rates than the native population of liberals, for sure. Probably both conservative and liberal. But so anyway, that's kind of their strategy. The liberal strategy is the immigrant strategy to gain their power, to help their power structure, because their ideology has become so anti-child, anti-family, anti-reproduction, pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ, like that ideology is just not going to be able to reproduce itself very well. It's because it's got too many things against just a nuclear family and having kids. So too many things against it, because that's sort of seen as normal, and the majority, and they're all about the minority opinions, the little things over here and over there, and being real supportive of all those things. So just necessarily is causing their population to decline. So I think that's really fascinating. And it's hard to sort of think about and project out, because it's such kind of an abstract idea, and it's a very data heavy. But once your birth rates go to a certain rate, like, you're done. So what liberals are going to have to do is they're going to have to try to appeal to these conservative people, get down off their high horse, quit trying to tell everybody what they're supposed to think. And they're going to have to actually appeal to people, what other people think. They're going to have to change their policies and their opinions of what's right, what's wrong, how the country should be. They're going to have to change those to a more conservative ideology, or else they're not going to be able to attract anybody to their party. It's just math, really. It's just math. So back to the voter ID thing. it's wildly popular, and it makes absolutely no sense that the Democrats would stand up against it. And this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Is this would be so easy for the Democrats to just give this, just act like you're for this and act like you want this for the sake of the American people, so that you don't look like a fucking loser, an idiot. Because even your Democrat voters want it. So you're telling your Democrat voters that you will not vote and you will not support something that they want. Okay?
Take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial.
Yeah, but they just probably are too stupid to know that they should not favor it, because they don't realize that it's Jim Crow 2.0. Because, you know, as we know from listening to the Democrats, the blacks are just too stupid to know how to do anything right. They don't know how to get an ID. I mean, come on. That's how dumb they are. See, this is how the Democrats are so offensive to everybody.
Controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote. So something of a non. Take a look here.
Yeah. And he didn't go over the other. You could kind of see it there. There's his previous slide. Democrats, 71% of Democrats are in favor of voter ID, and 95% of Republicans. So this is like an 85% of the American population is in favor of it. This is such an easy, I'm just amazed that this has wasted so much of our time on the national stage, wasted so much time in Congress. And part of the reason is because if the Democrats can really drag this out and make this, then it just gives less time for Republicans to get the other policies passed and the other laws passed they want to pass. So they're just trying to drag in their feet, trying to slow. So it could be anything. It could be no punching grandma's law. And the Democrats would be like, well, sometimes they just need to be punched. And so we're just going to take 6 months before we get this thing passed, and we're going to hem and haw about it, and we're going to complain about it. That's all this is. It's obstructionism. And they know this is a total common sense thing to do, that it's not some big racist thing, and it's just stupid. It's merely to obstruct, so to prevent Republicans from getting other things done. That's all. You know, you can't really take these people seriously. All right, guys. Well, that might be all I'm going to do for the day. I thought this was kind of funny. These the kids on Roblox are conducting immigration raids. So. The kids are doing okay. All right, the kids are doing just fine. We're gonna be all right. I thought that was funny. All right. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Okay, share the videos if you like. Comment on them. That would be great. I'd like to, we can have conversations that way as well. So, all right. Thanks for joining me. Everybody have a great day.